Idil Maulud public holiday monetary policy committee meeting shifts to Wednesday and Thursday. Headline inflation inches upward in September as Nigeria benefits from Africa Development Bank's $40 million infrastructure funding initiative. Plus, how can Nigeria engagements in continental trade assist her emerge stronger? Find out in our discussion segment. This is Business Express reaching you from our Abuja studio with me, Musa Abubakar. Business activities will take a break for 24 hours this Tuesday following the declaration of the day as public holiday by the federal government to mark Idil Maulud celebration. Consequently, business, stock market, banks and all public offices will remain closed to enable Muslim faithful commemorate the birth of Prophet Muhammad. The Consumer Price Index, CPI, which measures inflation, rose to 11.28% year-on-year in September compared to 11.23% in August. The National Bureau of Statistics, NBS, Sunday said the 0.05% points increase was as a result of increases recorded in all the divisions that yielded the headline index. The CPI report for September shows that urban inflation rate increased by 11.70% year-on-year from 11.67% recorded in August, while the rural inflation rate increased by 10.92% in September compared to 10.84% in August. Food inflation rose by 13.31% in September 2018 compared to 13.16% in August 2018. It is harvest time and farmers are reaping their toil with different fortunes. But then, after harvest, what next? Leka Tumbabatunde in this background report is tracking the death of infrastructure affecting farmers on the continent as the continental body moves to remove barriers to trade.
There is a town not far from Abuja, the nation's capital, and right in it are scattered villages and hamlets. Though close to the seat of power, the village of Tunga lacks basic infrastructure. The agrarian community is challenged by lack of access to motorable roads for their harvested crops to reach their target markets. This situation is not peculiar to this village, as a large proportion of African settlements are challenged over access to markets for their goods. Africa accounts for over $1 trillion of global trade, and of that amount, only 15% is transacted between African nations. The quest to improve trade relations on the continent is one that has received momentum in recent times, coupled with the coming into place of the Continental Free Trade Agreement. And the Africa Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, is championing this drive. Infrastructure, information and access to credit top the list of barriers to trade promotion.
If we go for intra-African trade, that's going to considerably improve our economies and help the continent become much more amenable to external shocks.
In seeking to deepen trade among African member states, another concern erupts. The continent is a major commodities exporter with multiple nations producing and growing same commodities. Attention is now shifting to how value of trade can be improved in view of the identified gaps.
Well, Asia started off, almost at the same level that we were in Africa, even lower levels. But they managed to start trading among themselves by creating, value chains and specializations. Each now country or each region, sub-region, concentrating on where it has comparative advantages, and then becoming part of the value chain that produces something that would be able to be exported out of the continent. So as we do develop intra-African trade, there will be those kinds of linkages and those kinds of economies of scale that will assist those value chains in automatically being directed to something that we're able to produce as a continent.
But while the world deliberates on how to ease the burden of trade, rural dwellers far away from urbanization across Africa will continue to bear the brunt of inadequate infrastructure that cuts across all strata of life.
Professor Ken Ife joins us now to look at circumstances surrounding trade in Africa and how Nigeria can emerge stronger through a more robust continental trade engagement. You're welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for
well,
inviting me.
Trade in Africa is put around more than $1 trillion. But among African countries, it's said to be around 15%. What does that imply?
First of all, this first signal is that 44% of the inter-regional and intra-regional trade are actually informal trade, which don't get captured. But based on the ones we capture, from 1985, it was 10%. Now, I'm even happy to hear that it's gone up to 15% because it used to be around 12, 13%. But in the same period, EU moved from 10% to 70% intra-regional trade. The thing is, we're not actually capturing all of that. But there are certain specific challenges for different regions. In the West Africa region, if you look at the belts, the agroecological zones are the same. So we are producing the same products, agricultural products. So you don't see much incentive for trade. But when you look at Africa as a whole, there are differences in the kind of things that we could trade on. And obviously, you look at technology, there is even bigger opportunities to trade within us. There are challenges.
Okay. Infrastructure seems to be a major challenge to trade.
Yeah.
Then infrastructure funding and capacity building, which is the most basic for?
Yeah. Well, let's look at infrastructure. Yeah. All projections on African infrastructure has always said that Africa needs $93 billion every year over the next 20 years to grow our infrastructure. But in the context of intra-regional trade, World Bank did a study of 2001 that said if only we put 20 billion, not 93 billion, on fulfilling the missing links in our regional infrastructure, that can bring extra $250 billion in trade, regional trade. So can you imagine when you invest 20 billion and you are getting 250 billion? That makes a strong case for intra-regional trade and dealing with infrastructure configuration. In other words, fulfilling the missing links in network connectivity, in rail connectivity, in power connectivity. All of those infrastructure, connect them and the region will prosper.
Okay, you made mention about of informal trade that is not captured. How valuable is the data gap?
It's quite substantial. If you look at ECOWAS, we have free movement of goods and services and right of establishment and capital. But the class 1, which are raw materials, they move around, that's complete liberalization. So, and that's where you have a lot of informal traders. And they're shipping them around. But if you bring value addition, a new protocol kicks in called ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, which allows you to trade without duties, but you must register as a company, register your products. We have rules of origin, all of those. So it gets progressively tougher for you to trade because you have to fulfill some of these conditions. So in answer to your question, yes, is there. We will capture them in due course. The same challenges in the region are the challenges we are facing as a country. Because if you look at our MSME, the number is 47 million number of businesses, 94% of it, and the overwhelming majority over 90% are micros, not even SMEs. So it's a problem that beset the whole continent.
Okay, exporting products and services outside Africa, it seems to be easier than within regions, within the continent. What are the underlying factors?
Yes, you can ship a standard container, 40-foot, 20-foot container from UK to Lagos or to Tema in Ghana. It could cost you $2,500. But if you move the same container from Lagos to Tema by road, it costs you $5,000. So it costs you twice as much. And you don't have to go far to get the evidence. Dangote said last week that when he moves his product from Nigeria, of course his cement and other products, to Ghana, he encounters 13 taxes in the Republic of Benin, wow. 15 taxes in Togo, and then 10 taxes in Ghana. So, and that it adds 29% more to the price of his goods. So this is a major concern, and that is real. And they're all contrived against free movement of goods and services. These products are registered under our ETLS scheme, but they're facing those nightmares.
So they're not, the trade barriers are still there?
They are there. But don't forget, when we talk about our neighbors, we have to look at ourselves. What do they say about ourselves? Okay. To move from Lagos to anywhere in the hinterland, imagine how many stops, checkpoints that you have to go to. There was a time I led a group of trade governance agents, I think it was in 2012. We went to Semeboda from Lagos. We encountered 26 checkpoints on our way going. Then in the night, by 9, coming back, the number doubled. Wow. The number of checkpoints doubled. So this is what they're experiencing when they're trying to come into Nigeria. But there are many other obstacles.
Okay, it's low manufacturing capacity and processing a factor?
No, without a doubt. Our ability as a country to compete or to be more competitive, in addition to trade capacity constraints, can be attributed to input costs, very high input costs. The energy costs could be as high as 40%, transportation costs could be as high as 20%, and then of course you have the bureaucracy and all of the red tapes. Okay. So it is not on our side. So they are suffering.
Now, in the ECOWAS region, 2 nations are yet to sign the Continental Free Trade Agreement, and Nigeria is one of the 2. What is responsible for this delay? Well,
we have to hear the government. The government says it's not that we are leading in that whole negotiation. Nigerian government is leading in the whole negotiation. We actually brought it to this point. But the fact is that we are conscious of the fact that we need to explore the impact that this could have on our economy, and then look at the readiness of our businesses to play in this new arrangement. And it is important that they do so. Now, there is the inevitability. There is the inevitability of free trade, improving our wealth, and also improving poverty reduction. There's absolutely the inevitability. We will need to be trading bilaterally, plurilaterally, and multilaterally. There's absolutely no question about that. But we need to do more searching for the truth about how is it going to impact us. We need to trade from our position of strength. We need to strengthen our trade capacity. We need to be aware and conscious of what it's going to do to businesses here, and then have a strategy and a plan to contain those. And that is what they are going through now, to understand and deconstruct the impact it could have.
Now some school of thought says it has to do with more to do with the manufacturers than the policymakers. Do you agree?
No, it just happened that the manufacturers are vocal about this, but it affects all the businesses. It affects the traders. But manufacturers manufacture the goods that the traders are going to handle to sell. There's no doubt about that. Government doesn't sell anything. Government deals with the enabling environment, and then does the trade negotiations to pave the way for the traders, to the big people, producers, to produce and sell their products. So it is not just manufacturers, it's every aspect of our industries, all the industries, the ICT, the service industries. Service industries are about 52 to 55% of our GDP. Okay. So the manufacturing is even very small, just about 10 to 11%. So it's not just manufacturers, but they have a strong voice, and it's a voice of reason, and that's why we are taking time to deconstruct the impact that this could have.
Now, how would you assess the the trade relationships between African countries, and what advice would you give to make it have the desired impact in the future?
Well, I think Nigeria has to continue to lead. We have to lead from the front, not from behind. Nigeria's population is only 200 million of 1 billion population in Africa. If we don't do the deal, others will go ahead without us. And we don't want to play a catch-up game. We have to be in it to be able to change the course, to be able to make it more profitable to us. So we'll have to be in that game, in that ring.
Thank you very much for
My
your
pleasure.
contribution, Professor Ken Ife.
Thank you.
Leave it there.
My pleasure.
Now, moving on, a new lifeline for infrastructure funding has been lined up for Nigeria and the rest of the continent's economies under the Africa Infrastructure Investment Fund, AIIF3, with $40 million ready for disbursement, an initiative approved by the African Development Bank, AFDB, and the third in a series of equity investments is a close-ended Pan-African infrastructure fund managed by South Africa-based Africa Infrastructure Investment Managers, AIIM. AFDB says AIIF is Africa-based and features 5 regional offices in South Africa, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, and Kenya, translating to on-the-ground knowledge and strong relationships to source infrastructure investment opportunities. AFDB's group's Director of Infrastructure and Urban Development, Amadou Omoro, said in terms of development outcomes, AIIF3 will create a quantifiable and measurable social and environmental impact by supporting energy and transport infrastructure access across sub-Saharan Africa. The fund will support the creation of more than 1,500 jobs at the project level and enhance capacity building and skills transfer. Now, the Standards Organization of Nigeria, SON, has inaugurated 4 standards on human resources. This is with the view to conforming to global best practices. Director General of SON, Osita Aboluma, said the standards were in line with the stipulation of the International Standard Organization, ISO. Considering that investment in human capital has taken a front seat as Nigeria joins the world to mitigate the effects of economic shocks. Nigeria now considers 4 out of the 11 ISO standards, and when fully implemented, will help build capacities and capabilities of the Nigerian workforce. The NSE All-Share Index closed trade for Monday, 19th November, positive by 0.51% to close 32,222.24 basis points, with market capitalization advancing to 11.7 trillion naira.
0.285 billion shares worth 11.539 billion naira in 13,245 deals were traded last week by investors on the floor of the exchange. The NSE All-Share Index depreciated by 0.44% to close the week as market capitalization dropped to 11.704 trillion naira. The financial services industry, when measured by volume, led the activity chart and was followed by the services industry, while the consumer goods industry occupied the 3rd place. Trading in the top 3 equities, Diamond Bank, Ikeja Hotel and FBN Holdings accounted for 708 million shares worth 1.758 billion naira in 1,957 deals. Unity Bank, Flour Mills and Prestige Assurance led the price gainers for the week, while Diamond Bank, C&I Leasing and Etana PLC topped the losers. Also traded during the week were 5,727 units of exchange-traded products ETPs valued at 2.284 million naira, while a total of 1,034 units of federal government bonds valued at 980,295 were traded in 10 deals. All indices finished lower, with the exception of NSE Consumer Goods and NSE Industrial Goods indices, which finished higher.
Thank you, Muplang, with that weekly market review. Increased inflation figures in the U.S., contraction of Japan's GDP in the third quarter of the year, and slowed growth in Euro area, all the just concluded week for the performance of major markets around the globe. Let's join Bosede Abel.
On the global scene, Africa's stock markets on Monday morning, 19th November, were majorly dominated by negative sentiments. South Africa's JSE Africa Top 40 and Namibia Overall Index started positive, while Nairobi All-Share, Tunisia's Tunindex and Ghana's GSE Composite Index opened red. In the early hours of Monday, Asian stock markets opened higher as ongoing tensions between the United States and China continued to weigh on investor sentiment. Nikkei, Shanghai Composite Index and the Hang Seng Index posted gains. Stocks in Europe opened slightly higher in early trading amid lingering unpredictability surrounding the UK's future relationship with European Union. While in the United States, futures on the S&P 500 and Nasdaq Composite Index were marginally lower Monday morning, but also pointing to a positive open.
Now a quick look at currency market, where the Naira held grounds at the weekend. Nigeria is seeking areas of collaboration with the People's Republic of China to enhance cluster development, capacity building and technology transfer and trade partnership beyond the fair. Chief Executive Office of the Small and Medium Enterprises Development Agency of Nigeria's Medan, Dikko Umarurada, disclosed this against the background of Nigeria's annual journey to China for the International Small and Medium Enterprises Fair.
This is an opportunity for us to access markets all over the world. This is an opportunity to showcase the product of Nigeria and the technology, skills and the services that we can provide in Nigeria.
About 25 made in Nigeria products were on display at the 15th edition of the fair, with over 3,000 SMEs from various countries in attendance. The 2018 edition featured China SME Summit and SME's cross-border business matchmaking activity. Now, remember to send us your feedback via email, businessexpress@nta.gov.ng. You can also reach us through our Twitter, and the handle is NTA News Now. Don't forget to use the hashtag BizX showing there on your screen. Until we come your way again, I am Musa Abubakar. Do have a productive week and enjoy the holiday.